Hey, I'm Drew, and I graduated Booth in 2019. I actually first heard about ETA at this very conference 4.5 years ago, and I was hooked. I left that first day thinking, I am so not qualified compared to all the panelists I'm seeing and all the speakers to even think about doing something like this. And two, I have to do it. Since then, I was just dead set on figuring out how do I go out and buy a small business. Well, I ended up teaming up with Next Gen Growth Partners after graduation. And together, after an 11-month search, we closed on Record Connect. And it's been about a year and a half that I've been running that since. Record Connect is an outsourced provider of the release of information services for local hospitals and clinics. In a nutshell, if you were to go into a hospital here in Chicago, down to the hospital basement, right past the morgue, you'd see a team of Record Connect folks working to process medical record requests. We're running that business through COVID, which has been an absolutely wild time. But if I could go back and tell myself 4.5 years ago, I'd say, true, you are definitely not qualified to do this. And two, you absolutely have to do this.
My name is Marcus Scott, and I graduated from Kellogg in 2013. Prior to business school, I actually went to the University of Florida where I played football before going in public accounting and eventually private equity, which is where I was introduced to the search fund model originally. I went back to school specifically to raise a fund and fortunately was able to do that. And then went on and searched for 1 year, 11 months, and 12 days before acquiring National Video Monitoring, not that I was counting. Since we've changed the name to IQ Monitoring, unfortunately, have grown pretty well. But we are a remote video monitoring business based out of Atlanta, Georgia.
Hello, I'm Ivana Butcher. I went to Kellogg School of Management. Afterwards, I worked for a hedge fund in New York. And then we started a search fund. We moved to the Czech Republic and we bought a company here.
And I'm Corbin Butcher. I also went to Kellogg School of Management, class of 2013. Before Kellogg, I was a United States Marine, and afterwards I worked in investment banking and then restructuring. And when we concluded our acquisition for our search, we bought a company called Bira Exhibitions, and we design, manufacture, deliver, and service exhibition and trade fair stands all over the world, but primarily in Western Europe.
Hello, ETA community. My name is Reed Tileston. I am a proud alum of the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, class of 2015. I'm the president of Giddings Hawkins Maintenance Service. What we do is pumping, industrial maintenance, and kitchen exhaust cleaning.
Hey, greetings, folks. This is Nathan Day, Booth class of 16. I'm the chairman and CEO of Navigate Inc. We acquired the company through my search fund, Salt Spring Capital, in 2018. Offices Minneapolis, Minnesota, Chicago, Illinois, and Shanghai, China. We're a full-service third-party logistics firm with some proprietary software as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Cavanaugh, Chicago Booth class of 2015, and I'm the CEO and president of Wolling Design Group. We provide warehouse management system software, or WMS, to the mid-sized warehousing market, including customers in third-party logistics, pharmaceuticals, retail and apparel, e-commerce, including as well as food and beverage and cold storage. We're based in Orange County, California.
I came into the first 100 days with a great game plan. I came in with like a 200 row spreadsheet and the detailed out what I'm going to do when, boom, boom, boom. And the quote that comes to mind is, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Well, our plans made it as far as the second day before they went right out the window. The game plan was for me to come in and shadow the president for the first 4 to 6 weeks to get a lay of the land, figure out the day-to-day, and just slowly graft into the organization. Well, after my welcoming myself to the new company speech, which had some heckling and a few big distractions, the president got a phone call that her house was on fire down the street. And so literally day 2, I'm going down the street with her and seeing her home go up in flames. And it's pretty clear to both of us, she's going to be out of commission for the time being. And so by day 3, I am in the fray, running the day-to-day, while still trying to figure out people's names and what it is exactly that we do. Needless to say, all the planning in the world can't make up for whatever is about to hit you when you walk through that door. But I'd say the big focuses out of the gate that didn't change were focusing on building credibility and building trust.
So my first 100 days as an operator may be a little bit unique in that it was the definition of a baptism by fire. I started out like most people with this great 90 and 180 day plan where I was going to focus on just listening right out of the gate, understanding each of the business units and the processes that they had, and starting to get my arms around the overall customer experience. And then like most, I wanted to then turn my focus to organic sales and really growing the business because I wanted to have a rocket ship first year. What happened instead? Instead, what happened is that I really ended up having to actually execute, not just listen, because we started out with a small company. We had 15 employees, lost one of them pretty quickly. And so I was licking stamps and sending out invoices and all kind of things. And we were fortunate, though, that we started to grow almost right out of the gate. But that and some of the dynamics we found in due diligence around the seller from an integrity standpoint ended up coming home to roost at about day 75, when I found out that the seller also was trying to set up a competing business through his wife, despite our non-competes and non-solicitations. And so then my focus turned not just to understanding the customer experience, but having to protect the customers as well. And an incredibly stressful first 12 months. But with all of that, it forced me to not just understand the business, but to build personal relationships with all of our customers. Again, we were small, but looking back on that, that has made a huge difference in that we've kept 90% of those customers over the last 6 years, which I'm really proud of. And I would encourage everybody to spend time getting to know the business and the people, even if you don't have the same stressors that force you to do it.
During my first 100 days, I focused on two activities. The first activity was spending time in the field. The kind of work that Giddings Hawkins does should be on America's dirtiest jobs. It was important that the team knew that as a new owner, I was not afraid to get my hands dirty. The second priority I focused on was making sure that payroll and compensation was done correctly. There's no better way to destroy your credibility as a new owner by messing up somebody's paycheck.
I think for me, the core focus was on the people. We've got about 100 folks globally on our staff. And so it was really about assuring them that although you can't guarantee they have a job in the future, that you're going to always be thinking of them first. I started by having fireside chats and town halls with a town hall, and then broke it out into fireside chats with smaller groups so that they could ask questions in a more comfortable forum. I also spent the first month or so traveling to our locations, which included a trip overseas to Shanghai, not only for the people that were there on the team, but also all the counterparties that we do business with as well. Really important for them just to understand that there'd be continuity at the leadership level and that they were in good hands heading forward.
So first 100 days at WDG was not dull, to say the least. So we knew coming in there was a couple of challenges that we were going to have to address. The first one being on the kind of, I guess, customer success mentality previously and the culture orientation at the firm. We knew that wasn't a big thing. We knew that the founder had a different approach where it was a little bit more professional service focused rather than long-term value, but it ended up being a little bit more troublesome than we first expected when we got in the door, including calls and sit downs with two of our largest customers in the first week to address some of the historical issues that we've had. Follow that up with a handful of operational challenges and essentially lack of processes. And a lot of times people just doing things because someone was screaming at them or a customer was upset. So we had to put a lot of structure in place, more so than we would have anticipated.
I can't live without a couple employees that I promoted, if you wish, into roles where they have increased responsibilities and they can do some of the tasks that were originally done by the previous owner. So that could really free my hands and I could focus on things that really drive the future of the company. But it took me 2 years to get here and to train these people so that they can do these things.
It's a good question. I'll go with Peloton. With my schedule, it makes it incredibly easy to get some exercise and have a break from the norm where I can zone out. But Peloton's been a real blessing through 2020.
Yeah, for me, without a doubt, this has got to be hiring a professional CFO. We did that early in 2020. That's been a total game changer for us as an organization.
We really focused on a oil drop strategy where we set up between 5 to 6 little projects within the company and ran them like startups to see which one would sort of hit a market need. We tried everything from custom furniture. We tried an e-shop. We tried outsourcing assembly people. We tried building garden houses, and we tried building internal office space in warehouses. And
graphic studio as well.
And graphic studio. And then we also tried virtual products, so virtual stands, virtual showrooms. 95% of what we tried, 90% of what we tried failed. What didn't fail was building office space in warehouses, especially in Germany, while that was still an option. But the other thing that didn't fail and has started to pick up are these virtual showrooms and virtual stands. And as Ivona alluded to, that was something that we were really happy about because that's a strategy we want to pursue even when COVID goes away. We think it's a good add-on and it's a good differentiator.
Also a great question. You know, for us, we are a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergency response business. So we, fortunately or unfortunately, had started preparing for that potential risk months before those orders really came down in Georgia, at least. And we had a lot of preparation to do. I mean, we were thinking about that in the context of our headquarters. We were thinking about that in the context of our customers that are spread across 30 states today. But we prepared for that potential risk by really just having to change around our operations and begin testing out how we could work from home if we had to. As we started to go through those tests, we also saw that it wasn't necessarily going to be as effective working remotely. And so we also were preparing for how we would actually make our office environment safe or adhere to whatever regulations might be coming out. So we did a lot of pre-work before the final verdicts came down here in Atlanta.
The field technicians do not have the luxury of working from home. So when COVID-19 hit and the stay-at-home orders went into effect, my priority was how to keep the field technicians safe while still keeping the trucks moving.
This has been a crisis for our company, and you never really know how the relationships will work out until you experience that. And we've been super happy with how cooperative and supportive our board was, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is to choose the right investors and consequently the right board. So don't underestimate that.
The nature of our workforce. Pre-COVID, we had 150 people on site at various hospitals and in a big call center setup. As soon as the pandemic hit, we started thinking about how we could shift to a more remote environment. And we went from having people in 2 different states to now we've got 27 different states where we're able to pull talent from.
One, it would be the strength and the resiliency of our team. And then 2, same thing for our business model. For everybody in ETA, everybody talks about the value of recurring revenue, why those businesses are so attractive. And that certainly proved out through 2020 with us, especially in regard to the type of value that we drive, which is really around emergency response. That's kind of our main product line. And that actually becomes more needed in times of economic distress because there's more property damage, more people breaking in. And so although we saw customers really pulling back from entering into big contracts, we fortunately also were able to maintain those customers through this really challenging time and perform well, have visibility through the year, which I know a lot of businesses did not have.
In regards to COVID, what has gone surprisingly well for your company, and how have you been able to build off of that success? We're in an industry where we support warehouses and their software, WMS warehouse management systems. So one of the unlikely benefits of COVID, shutting down retail stores and everyone buying a lot of things online, is that a continued growth in e-commerce, right? If you're not going to a store to buy something, it's going to get shipped to you. Chances are it's going to be shipped out to a warehouse. So we actually saw a pretty significant increase in demand for our product, although I wouldn't necessarily say it was a complete increase in buying decisions. But what COVID really did, and we're seeing a lasting effect, is it really accelerated the timeline for digital transformation from these warehouses. A lot of companies were still a little bit uneasy to make buying decisions in the first couple of months post-COVID, although I think now that's subsided, we're really seeing a lot of interest. But it really was an area where we saw people realizing, oh, wait a second, my old technology doesn't allow me to really service the e-commerce sector well. And this is where we know future growth is, and this is where we need to be today.
And the only thing I think we would do differently is allocate definitely less time to capital providers. They obviously have their preferred clients in PE, and we weren't high on their radar or their priority list. Allocate them less time and definitely more time to the local small-time brokers. We initially turned up our nose at them because we thought that they weren't sophisticated enough. Turns out they are extremely valuable, and not for their sophistication, which doing a deal at this level doesn't really require, but more for their ability to make the sellers feel super comfortable with the process through all the stages and comfortable in negotiations. Because doing a deal with someone with these owners requires a lot of hand-holding, a lot of reassurance, and these brokers are masters at making them feel comfortable and getting them through the whole process.
I guess one thing that I got better at over time, but wish I would have done a little bit sooner, is just being more honest with myself about deals that probably won't get done. I fell in love with this one little deal that was shock therapy for horses. Equine shock therapy. Great little business. Also thought it was hilarious. And there was no way that search investor would want to go for that type of a play.
It was something I did 3 months into my search, and I would do it on day one if I was searching again. But measure success daily and weekly. Obviously in ETA, success can be very binary. Did you buy a company today or not? And most days, that's absolutely no. So especially if you're a single searcher, right? The ambiguity and the loneliness that comes with that. What I found is that once I put that board up, it helped remind me that I was moving one step closer to that deal, right? I've done what I said I was going to do. I've moved closer. I'm successful this week. And that keeps you motivated, that keeps you focused, that keeps you energized. And it's really important to do that when you could end up having a really...
One thing I would definitely change in the search process is we were a little bit more of a volume shop. So we focused on high volume outreach, had some personalized messages added to it, which I think helped us get noticed. But I think in this day and age with search and with private equity, there's a lot of people looking to buy companies in the market. And even my seller acknowledged that he had about 12 emails before he saw mine. And he said that my message was different, really the search fund pitch and our sales angle, they resonated with him.
We've had a really good relationship with the sellers. So there weren't any big skeletons, but there were still surprises. After we arrived to the company, we found full storage halls, although there was nothing in inventory on paper. We found a Jaguar car standing in front of the office, a random guy living in company apartment, a herd of sheep. So now we have sheep behind the company. So there are surprises, nothing too significant.
One thing I underappreciated was just how bad the data was. Even after we had a quality of earnings done for the deal, there's still a lot of noise in the numbers that I didn't fully appreciate. And so even a year and a half in, we're still trying to figure out what the real net working capital at the time of close really should have been. It's still figuring out what revenues historically were. And that's not entirely uncommon from what I'm now learning.
I think critically, and I didn't focus on it during my MBA, but fortunately I had the classes, would be something like marketing strategy to really understand how to think through differentiation, messaging, how to really identify your value proposition, and then and then use that in the marketplace to solve client issues. I think that's hugely important. And then, of course, the ability to integrate data in answering those questions. Those are things that I think are not nice to haves. I think, especially for our business, they're absolutely critical.
One thing that you can't escape Booth without is just understanding the importance of free cash flow. Going through school, I got it. But running the day-to-day, I get it. I've really got it now.
A saying that I learned in the entrepreneurship through acquisition class taught by Professor Mark Agnew and Brian O'Connor: what gets measured gets done.
I think the unconventional piece of wisdom we can give is that two of our best investors, one that sits on our board and another one who's one of our leading, initially said absolutely not. They would never invest in our search. The first, because we're married, and he did not want to layer marital risk over his investment risk. And the second, because he just said Czech Republic isn't interesting. It's too small. You'll never find something. I mean, there are only 100,000 companies. Of those, maybe 50,000 are in an interesting industry. Of those, maybe 7,000 fit all the reoccurring and margin requirements we would have. And okay, there's a turnover rate of 2% a year, and you are a new entrant without any connections because you're moving from New York. We just don't believe you'll find one. So they told us that we should do a search in the US and that would be funded, and they believed that we could do it and that would be fine. But we really stuck to where we thought we had an edge. And eventually we overcame that. And I think it's interesting that, investors, that no is no at the moment. It doesn't mean that it's no forever. And you really have to keep that in mind. And it's really true with a lot of aspects of searching and running a company. You have to get comfortable with rejection, understand why you've been rejected, and then, if it makes sense to reapproach. And in most of the cases, it does.
Okay, if I could roll the clock back a couple of years, here's a few of the things I would tell myself. First, searching is an absolute emotional roller coaster, so buckle up. Also, it's okay to cry. Certainty is an illusion, so you better get comfortable with uncertainty. If you don't have a meditative practice yet, start one yesterday. Fire fast, even faster than that. The art of decruitment is as important as the art of recruitment. If good news travels fast, bad news travels faster. Get a daily huddle going with your team ASAP, especially if you're all remote. Implement the Rockefeller habits, implement EOS. It's never as good as you hope. It's never as bad as you fear. Finally, it's all passing so fast, so hold it lightly and enjoy the ride.
So in closing, I'd like to share a story about my relationship with my seller and a little bit of an unconventional story that was instrumental in helping me get to close at the end of the day. So got some good advice with early investors that talked about it's important to have your seller thinking about the end in mind, what they're going to do with that lump sum of cash that you're going to pay them when you buy their business. So for me, my seller was really big into sailing, and that was something that we bonded on early. Growing up as a kid, my father had a boat. My family would go out sailing all the time. And we used to actually one time chartered a boat in the British Virgin Islands as a family, island hop, place to place for 2 weeks. And my seller, Tim, actually had a trip to the British Virgin Islands planned in that December. So thinking forward, thinking like a search fund seller trying to close a deal, you better believe we bought up that boat again and again that he was going to buy when I bought his business. Now, the problem with my seller is he made abundantly clear when we first connected in January of 2019 that he was not going to sell his business until 2020. He knew he had a great growth year coming ahead of him, wasn't interested in selling, and wanted to wait until that time. Now, we know as searchers, time is our most precious resource. I couldn't wait 12 months to get Tim to sell me the business. But here he is, he told me explicitly multiple times, Dan, I'm waiting until 2020, but we can stay in touch until then. So I had to find a way to motivate my seller to start entertaining the option of selling much earlier. So kind of invented a story that I was going to be in his neck of the woods, business based in Orange County. So I told him I was going to be in LA, meeting with an investor. I don't have any investors in LA. but I wanted to have an excuse to sit down with the seller in person, talk to him a little bit more, and help convince him to sell the business early. So one of the things we talked about was, hey, why don't we go sailing that day? And I was like, great. What better thing than two people on a boat, having some beers, talking about the future, and having that ocean breeze in our hair. Now, one problem there is I may have oversold my sailing skills just a little bit. Since that junior high trip I talked about in the British Virgin Islands, I've been a sailboat exactly 2 times in the previous 20 years. So here I am, 2 weeks away, to go sailing with a founder, and I don't know how to sail. So I had to figure something out pretty fast. Searching out of Manhattan, and fortunately, this is April, meeting the seller the first weekend in May, was able to schedule a lesson with the sailing community, Hudson River sailing community. Go there the day on Wednesday, flying out Thursday, going sailing with him on Friday. Get to the sailing community on Wednesday, and it is pouring buckets and high winds. There's not a single boat out on the water. Telling my guy Randy that the story and why I'm learning to sail that day, and he's shaking his head the whole time. And I just look at him and say, Randy, I've got to learn how to sail today. Walks over, comes back with an extra waiver, sign it, and next thing I know, Randy and I are out on that water. We got a sunfish whipping around the Hudson River Bay. We're the only boat out in the water. But learned how to sail that day. So as you can imagine, since I'm sitting here today, deal wasn't a disaster, or the sailing trip wasn't a disaster. We didn't capsize, and in fact, on that boat, I convinced Tim to entertain selling me the business and taking an offer that month. Helped build that relationship, and it was something where that relationship really grew strong, and we always talked about that sailing trip, through some of the tough times of diligence. So I guess my lesson here is that, sometimes you gotta invest in that relationship, and sometimes you gotta do some crazy things to try to get a deal closed.